Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're going to tackle something
pretty meaty.
Yeah, pretty meaty. Human nature and power dynamics, how we interact with each other. How we influence each other.
Yeah.
We've got some really interesting sources for this one.
A really eclectic mix.
Yeah. Classic lit, military strategy, even
art theory, a little bit.
Art theory, yeah.
Wow.
So we're hoping by the end of this, you'll have a little bit better understanding of a framework for understanding the people around you.
And yourself.
Yeah, even yourself. Spotting manipulation tactics, making strategic decisions, just navigating those tricky social situations we all
find ourselves
in, yeah. So to kick things off, let's jump into the laws of human nature.
Okay.
This excerpt, it talks about how we judge.
We
project, our own
shortcomings.
Narcissism, yeah.
Envy, passive aggression.
And everybody else.
But
I'm not ourselves.
Yeah, it's like we have these blind spots. When it comes to our own
flaws.
Yeah.
So how do we get past that?
Well, the author suggests shadow work, basically.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a popular idea.
It's a very popular idea, yeah. It's acknowledging the less flattering parts of ourselves, the parts that we try to hide, yeah. And the idea is by confronting our, the shadow self,
right,
we can actually start to understand our motivations and our behaviors better.
So by getting to know our own darkness, we can better recognize it in other people.
Exactly. It's like you develop a sixth sense for these agendas.
For those hidden agendas. So then you can make
better decisions in all your relationships, professional and personal.
Doesn't that make us more cynical, though?
Not necessarily, no. It's about understanding that everyone
has an agenda.
Operates with a mix of motivations, conscious and unconscious.
Right.
And, we all have agendas, even if we're not fully aware of them.
Okay, so it's not about being suspicious. It's about
having realistic expectations.
Yeah,
recognizing that human behavior is,
messy.
It's messy, it's complex. It's often driven by forces that we don't even really see.
Okay, I like that. Now let's switch gears completely.
Okay.
Warfare,
yeah.
It sounds a little intense.
It's a bit, yeah.
We have this book,
The 33 Strategies of War.
The 33 Strategies of War.
By Robert Greene.
And it basically says that these
ancient principles can be applied to modern
everyday life. Which I find fascinating.
Me too.
What are some of these strategies that resonate with you?
One that comes to mind is pick your battles carefully.
Okay.
It's about conserving your energy.
Right.
Focusing on what matters.
It's so easy to get
bogged down,
yeah. In just the minutia.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to, be strategic about where we direct that energy.
Okay, so saying no more often.
Saying no can be a power move.
It can be a power move.
It is a power move. You're setting boundaries, defining your priorities.
I think a lot of people have trouble with that.
It's hard.
Especially people who are like...
People pleasers.
People pleasers, yeah.
Can't be everything to everyone.
That's true.
And by trying to do that, you just end up...
spread too thin.
Spreading yourself way too thin.
Okay, so we're picking our battles. What else?
Let's see. Turn the tables is another one.
Okay.
The power of observation and choosing your moment.
Okay, so waiting for the right time.
Observing your opponent. Understanding their weaknesses.
Like in a movie or something.
Yeah, like in a movie. Instead of reacting impulsively, you wait.
You wait for the right moment to strike.
Yeah.
Okay, so patience.
Patience, yeah. It's not about being passive. It's about choosing your actions strategically.
Okay, so kind of goes hand in hand with...
Control the dynamic. Which is taking charge of the situation.
Okay, instead of letting yourself
be controlled by your emotions or by someone else's agenda.
Okay, so you're steering the conversation, or...
You're steering the interaction, yeah.
The interaction in a
way that benefits you.
Now, we got to be clear here.
Right.
We're not talking about manipulating people.
No, it's not about manipulation or deceit.
It's more about It's
about being aware of those forces at play.
Yeah.
And using that awareness to your advantage.
Okay, so like in a negotiation or...
In everyday conversations even.
Everyday conversations, yeah. Okay, I like that.
Subtly influencing the other person.
Okay.
Without them even realizing it.
Okay, so we've got shadow work. We've got these 33 strategies of war. And now we have to get a little scandalous.
Okay.
Seduction.
The book is
The Art of Seduction.
The Art of Seduction, also by Robert Greene.
I'm really interested to see how this ties into
power.
Power.
Yeah, well, Robert Greene argues that seduction is not just about
romance.
Romance, yeah. It's about persuasion. Influence in all aspects of life.
Okay, so it can be applied to
all kinds of situations.
Yeah.
Winning over a client, persuading your boss, getting your point across.
In a meeting,
yeah.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
One of the most interesting concepts is indirection.
Indirection, okay.
And this is the idea that making someone feel like they're in control actually gives you the upper hand.
That's kind of counterintuitive.
It is counterintuitive.
How does that work?
Well, Greene gives an example of Madame de la Grande Mademoiselle.
Okay.
And her suitor, Lausanne. Instead of showering her with attention, he made himself scarce.
Played hard to get.
He played hard to get.
Okay.
Piqued her curiosity, made her work for his affection.
So it worked.
It worked, yeah. By creating that sense of scarcity and uncertainty.
Scarcity, right?
He made himself more desirable.
Makes you more valuable.
More valuable, yeah.
People want what they can't have.
Exactly. It's human nature.
So beyond indirection, what else stands out?
Greene also emphasizes choosing the right
victim.
Right. Now, before you get alarmed, I want to clarify. He's not talking about anything unethical or harmful.
Right.
It's about understanding your audience.
Okay.
Their vulnerabilities and desires.
So tailoring your approach.
Yeah.
Okay, so knowing
what makes them pick.
What makes them tick.
What they're looking for, what they're afraid of.
And then you craft your message based on that.
Exactly.
So it's like we're tying together all these threads, yeah. Shadow work, seduction, into this tapestry of
human behavior
and influence. I'm ready to keep going, but we got to take a quick break.
All right.
We'll be back with even more insights, and
we'll dive even deeper.
Welcome back, deep divers. Before the break, we were just getting into how these principles of seduction can be applied in all kinds of areas, not just romance, as you might think.
Yeah, and I think as we keep going down this rabbit hole of human nature, you're going to see how a lot of these concepts, even if they seem really different, are actually connected in some really fascinating ways.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those historical figures mentioned in The Art of Seduction. Cleopatra, for one.
Yeah, Cleopatra, I mean, she's been captivating people for centuries. And it wasn't just beauty. She was super intelligent, knew how to create this aura of power and mystery.
I've always been fascinated by her. I mean, she had some of the most powerful men in the world wrapped around her little finger. Makes you wonder, was she deliberately using those techniques, or was it just like instinct for her?
That's a good question. It's probably a mix of both, to be honest. Some people are just naturally gifted when it comes to understanding those unspoken dynamics of attraction and influence. But anyone can learn to develop those skills too.
So it's not just about having that raw charisma, it's something you can cultivate.
Right. It's about learning the psychology behind desire and building a persona that projects those qualities that people find irresistible.
Which Cleopatra definitely did. Anyone else besides Cleopatra? Did Greene talk about any men who were masters of this?
He did. One of the most interesting examples, I think, is Napoleon. He wasn't considered, traditionally handsome or anything, but he had charisma, like in spades, and this ability to inspire incredible loyalty in his followers.
Well, he is considered one of the greatest military leaders of all time. What was it about him specifically that drew people in?
Greene says that Napoleon understood the importance of those grand gestures, those symbols. He knew how to make people believe he was invincible, even when he was facing setbacks. He used powerful language, powerful images to motivate his troops, to basically make them believe they were going to win, even when the odds were against them.
So it's not just about tactics, it's about getting people to buy into the vision, to believe in you.
Exactly. And I think that applies to any kind of leadership role, not just military. Leading a company, a team, anything, inspiring people, motivating them. It's a huge part of being an effective leader.
Totally. It's about creating that story, that vision, so compelling that people will follow you anywhere, even if they don't know what's going to happen. Okay, so we've talked about powerful men. Besides Cleopatra, any women that Greene highlights who use these ideas effectively?
Yeah, he talks about Mae West, the Hollywood actress, famous for her wit, her bold personality. She really defied all the expectations placed on women back then, used her image to take control of her career in a time when women had very little power in Hollywood.
She was definitely ahead of her time. What was it about her that resonated so strongly?
Well, she understood the power of self-promotion. building a personal brand, so to speak, but one that was both alluring and completely unique. She embraced her sexuality, and she wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo, speak her mind. She really embodied that idea of control the dynamic that we were talking about earlier.
She wrote her own rules, basically. It's inspiring to see how she used those seduction techniques to create her own success on her own terms.
And it just goes to show that these principles can be used for good or for bad, depending on your intentions.
That's an important point. This isn't about learning how to manipulate people for your own gain. It's about understanding how human interaction works and using that knowledge to create better outcomes.
Okay, let's talk a little more about creating that perfect illusion we touched on earlier. How did that fit into the whole idea of seduction and influence?
So Greene says that people are drawn to images, to ideas, even more than to reality sometimes. You know, we all have fantasies, desires, things we wish we had, and we project those onto other people. And anyone who understands that can use it to their advantage. They create a persona or a story that taps right into those desires.
So it's kind of like playing on people's hopes and dreams.
It can be, yeah. But it doesn't have to be manipulative. Think about marketing. Good ads don't lie about a product, but they present it in a way that makes it appealing to the customer's aspirations. So it's about framing, highlighting certain things, making that emotional connection.
Exactly. And you see that in personal interactions, too. Think about first dates. People are putting their best foot forward.
Or trying to make a good impression.
Right. But the question is there a point where creating that illusion goes too far? What happens when reality doesn't live up to the hype?
Good point. It seems like there needs to be some authenticity there, too.
Absolutely. The most powerful seductions, to use that word, have some truth to them. You can't build real influence on a foundation of lies.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between putting your best self forward and staying true to who you are.
Exactly. And speaking of presenting things in the best light, that brings us to our last source, the new mission of art. Now, this might seem like a bit of a jump from what we've been talking about, but trust me, it adds another layer to this whole discussion of power and aesthetics.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I don't really see the connection between art and power, but I'm open to being convinced.
Well, the author argues that art, at its core, can reflect a deeper understanding of human nature and what we strive for, what we consider ideal. He says that great art should aim for perfection, harmony, qualities that can actually elevate the human spirit.
I get how art can be inspiring, moving, but how does that connect to power dynamics?
Think about it this way. Art and design are often used to create a certain feeling, a certain message. From minimalist design to those big, immersive experiences, aesthetics can really impact our emotions. They shape how we see the world. A well-designed space can make you feel calm, energized, even intimidated. Colors, textures, shapes, they all have an effect on us, whether we realize it or not.
So you're saying that even things like the way a room is designed can influence our actions or decisions?
Absolutely. Think about a courtroom. It's designed to evoke feelings of seriousness, authority, respect for the law. Or a high-end store. Those luxury brands, everything from the lighting to the music, is designed to make you feel a sense of exclusivity, to make you want what they're selling.
I've never really thought about it that way. It's almost like a subtle form of persuasion.
Exactly. And it's everywhere. The clothes we wear, the cars we drive. We're making aesthetic choices all the time, sending messages about who we are, what we value.
And those choices, whether we're thinking about it or not, they make a difference in how people see us.
That's why it's so important to pay attention to the aesthetics we're creating, both in our personal lives and in our work.
Are you saying we all need to become artists or designers to be successful?
No, not at all. But I think it's important to at least appreciate the power of aesthetics, to understand how they can be used to achieve specific goals.
This has been such an interesting conversation. We've covered so much ground. Our own psychology, military history, art. It's amazing how it all connects.
And through all of that, we've seen these patterns emerge, these fundamental aspects of human behavior, how we influence each other, sometimes in very subtle ways.
I feel like I have a whole new way of looking at myself and the people around me.
That's exactly what we were hoping for. This whole deep dive is about giving you the knowledge, the tools to understand and navigate those complex human interactions in a more effective way.
So as we come up for air, so to speak, what's the one big takeaway you want to leave people with?
I would say the most important thing is to be aware. really pay attention to what's happening beneath the surface in your interactions with other people.
Notice how people are trying to influence you and how you're influencing them.
And pay attention to the aesthetics you're creating, the choices you're making. Because those choices, whether you realize it or not, they're sending a message. They're saying something about you.
So the learning doesn't stop here.
Definitely not. It's really just the beginning. Now that you've had a glimpse into these hidden patterns of human behavior, the challenge is to see how those play out in your own life and the world around you.
Welcome back, deep divers. We've been exploring so much these hidden patterns in human behavior, power dynamics.
And it's really fascinating how these ideas we've been talking about, like shadow work, military strategy, even seduction, they all connect in a way.
Yeah. We've been talking about creating an illusion, using it to your advantage, like Cleopatra, Napoleon.
And we see it in everyday life, too. Like you said, marketing, even on a first date.
Right, but you said something important. It's not about being fake.
No, not at all. The best illusions, they have to have some truth to them. You highlight certain parts of yourself, of your message, things that will connect with people.
So it's like showing your best side, but authentically.
Exactly. Like a painter using light and shadow to make a portrait more interesting. They're not changing the person's face, but they're emphasizing certain features to create a certain effect.
Okay, I see that. So it's not about tricking people, it's more about like framing.
Right, framing. And the way you frame things, it can be really powerful. It changes how people see you, your ideas, even products, like we were talking about.
Okay, before the break, we were talking about the new mission of art and that connection between art and power.
It's not something people always think about, but it's definitely there.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
The author says aesthetics can actually be used to influence people, to get them to take action. He thinks great art should be about perfection, harmony, things that elevate the human spirit.
Okay, art can definitely inspire, but how does that equal power?
Well, aesthetics create a feeling, an atmosphere. They change our emotions, even how we see things. Like minimalist design, it's not just about clean lines.
Right, it's about feeling calm.
Exactly. And that feeling can be very powerful. It can make people more open to ideas or to trust someone.
You mean like how a room is designed could affect my decisions?
Absolutely. Think about courtroom. It's designed to feel serious, to make you respect the law. Or a fancy store. They use lighting, music, everything to make you feel like you need what they're selling.
Wow. I never thought about it that way. It's almost like you're being persuaded, but you don't even realize it.
Right. And it's everywhere. The clothes we wear, what kind of car we drive. We're making these aesthetic choices all the time, whether we know it or not. And they say something about us.
So those choices affect how people see us, even if we're not trying to send a message.
Exactly. That's why it's important to pay attention to the aesthetics we're creating in our lives, in our work, everything.
So are you saying we all need to be artists or designers to be successful?
No, not at all. But we should understand how aesthetics work, how they can be used.
This has been a really interesting conversation. We've talked about psychology, history, art. It's amazing how it all ties together.
We see these patterns, these ways people act, how we influence each other without even realizing it sometimes.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of myself and how I interact with the world.
And that's really the whole point of this deep dive, to give you the knowledge, the tools to understand those human interactions and use them to your advantage.
So before we wrap up, what's the one thing you want listeners to take away from all this?
Be aware. Pay attention to what's happening when you're interacting with people. Look for those subtle things.
Those little hints about how people are trying to influence us.
And how we're influencing them, even if we don't realize it. Look at the choices you make, how you present yourself, what kind of environment you create. Those things matter.
So we don't stop learning here. This is just the beginning.
Exactly. Now that you've seen some of these hidden patterns, the real challenge is to apply that knowledge in your own life, see how it plays out.
Deep divers, it's time for us to surface for now, but the exploration doesn't stop here. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the mysteries of human nature. Until next time, stay curious.